All right, Blake. So, do you think we've got everything ready for this launch? Because it's been like a 2 month slog getting all this stuff prepared. I just want to make sure that everything's ready.
I think everything's ready, and I think it's going to be really well received. So there's this group of people that's going through some of my content in one of my vision courses. It's a pretty in-depth course, and they're going through it as a group, and they put me in their WhatsApp in case I ever wanted to chime in. And I was just looking through there like the lurker that I am, and I found this really interesting thing that they were talking about with our course. They've named us Blaven.
Blaving like a celebrity conglomerate.
Yeah, like Ben and Jennifer, like Benifer.
Yeah.
Or,
So
or
so we would be Blaving Rude Castle then.
Blaven Rude
I
Castle.
like
I
that.
want. I wonder what our faces would look like slammed together. I mean, we're pretty similar. I mean, we both have the beard and similar facial structures.
So what like if we had a love child, what would Blaving Rude Castle look like?
Yeah, I mean, would he have like your awesome blue eyes or my hazel eyes? I mean, I don't know. What would this guy look like? This
Let's have a
Blaven
look.
Rude Castle.
How about you do a little bit of AI trickery and put it together? Let's see what our child would look like.
Let's see what he would look like. All right. Here we go. All right, you ready for this?
Yeah, let's
This
do
is
it.
this is Blaven Rude Castle.
Oh, oh, I don't know how that makes me feel. I feel a bit violated. That's
Oh my gosh.
that's weird, but accurate.
Look at this guy in the lower left with a lens coming out of his arm. I don't know if we'd
What?
have like
Yeah.
a morphed child there, but this guy looks pretty good. He looks like a guy I'd like to hang out with.
Yeah, the one on the bottom right though, he looks a bit more naughty, so I kind of like him better. He looks like he
Yeah.
might be trouble.
Okay. Well, we got to get this webinar going. Dude, we got like 3 minutes. How about you go do something with your hair?
What's wrong with it?
Looks like a raccoon stuck its like finger in an electric socket.
All right, give me 2 minutes. I'll make sure it's better before we start.
All right. Thanks,
I'll
Steve.
back in a bit. I'll put some lights on as well.
Okay.
I hope the battery on my camera doesn't die while you put your makeup on. What's next? Bit of mascara. Ridiculous is this. This is what I've got to put up with. Oh, you look beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, look at this face. There's no makeup on this.
It looks like the face. It's like the face of a shriveled avocado.
How dare you?
It's gonna have to make its way into the webinar. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Make Great Shots, and this is the truth behind the shot. This is an exclusive webinar where we're gonna share the details behind some of the images that we had requested you vote on.
Yeah, and really, the reason why we wanted to call this the truth behind the shot is it's also a bit of a confessional because, not about Blake's shots, but some of my images, they ended up having quite a lot of cheating in them. So this is me coming clean and revealing all. And as shameful as some of the deeds are that I've committed during these image edits, I feel that you might learn some quite useful tricks from the information that we're going to give you.
I think so too, and I think that we have the results right in front of us here. So, do you think we should go ahead and give them the results first, or talk about the images, or do a little bit of both? What do you think, Gavin?
Well, we do a bit of both, but I mean, I don't really know what the point is. I think everyone's probably going to assume that I've won the contest. Let's be honest.
They did, and here's the crazy part about this contest. I just tallied up all the numbers, and option B was the winner for every single round.
That's interesting.
I think like we told them to vote on these images and what they thought was the best, and they just all voted for option B. So maybe they just like B because it stands for best. Who knows?
Or maybe it's because that was on the right side of the page. Maybe there's like a visual bias.
Maybe we just discovered something in this survey that nobody knows about surveys.
Yeah. You know, like I said, there's no point worrying about it because obviously I've won this.
I'm pretty sure, but the numbers, let's look at the numbers. All right, so round one, that was McDonald Fall. And we had option A was Gavin, and option B was Blake. And option B ran off with 1,746 votes. And option A had 957. So 65% of the votes went to option B. So Blake, you get one tally mark for you. I'm talking about myself in third person again.
So your shot won that?
It did, Gavin. It's not looking good for you so far. Sorry. Okay, round 2 was probably one of my favorite locations I've ever photographed in my entire life. One of the greatest experiences I've ever had, and I guess I'm glad I got to share it with you, Gavin. But that was the mountain goat at the top of Logan Pass as we're overlooking Hidden Lake. Option B, 52% of the votes at 980 votes. Option A, 48% at 905, and that went to Gavin.
Oh, so I finally won one, did I? By quite a lot, I noticed.
80 votes, so you won by 4%. That was a tight one. That was our tightest race the whole time.
4% difference?
4% difference, yep.
You're telling me that people thought mine was only better 4%?
I'm not telling you. The votes are telling you that.
I think we might have to just sort of question the integrity of this contest.
We definitely do. They all picked option B. Let's go to round 3. Round 3, option B, 69% of the votes with 913 votes. Option A, 31% of the votes, 412. This location was probably my second favorite. Sun Point Coast. I know I did a lot of work on that one, so I think I deserve that win. So Blake gets 2.
Hang on a second here. Surely this is a mistake, because I'm looking at that image and did you paste those birds into that shot?
We'll talk about that later. Let's just finish up here, Gavin. Stop trying to sidetrack this. I know you're getting nervous.
I'm sure I'm still going to win, though. I'm not worried.
Yeah. Round 4, Many Glacier. This one, option B, 83% of the votes, 1,394, went to Gavin. Option A, 17%, 288 votes, went to Blake. So we are now officially tied 2-2.
Yeah. I mean, obviously my shot was just leagues ahead of yours, and that one, I mean, it's not even the same contest, is it, really?
I can agree with that one, but I will say I'm looking at that one, and I think I know why it's leagues ahead, because you're accusing me of pasting in some birds. I think you pasted in something bigger into that one.
Well, I mean, let's not, we'll get into that later, like you said. Let's go to the next one. So the next one's the decider, is it?
Next one is the decider. Round 5. Option B with 68% of the votes, 519. Option A with 32% of the votes, 244.
I think this is rigged. I think there's no way I could have lost this contest. I think it's rigged.
You think it's rigged?
Whose website is this on? Is it on your website?
Mm-hmm.
So you've got access to all the back end of things, like.
I may or may not, but why are you questioning my integrity? These are people voted for these things, Gavin.
Well, I mean, just look at the images. How could I lose?
It's okay. It's okay. In my heart, you're a winner, but option B won every one of them, and B is the first letter of my name, so that's why I won. And I've got this nice shiny trophy that I don't have to spend any money on shipping to send to you now. So you should be happy about this, Gavin. It means more money in our pockets when we sell this course, because I don't have to take that out of the profits.
Yeah, it's great. Congratulations, Blake.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
You really deserved it.
I'm one of the greatest photographers in the world, according to this.
Between the two of us.
But hey, if you're watching this, there's an opportunity for you to possibly be one of the greatest photographers in the world. But we'll talk about that later. All right, Gavin. So you're going to get an opportunity to talk about your images, because we need to talk about the truth behind the stuff. I hope that your demeanor stays positive the whole time. But before we get into that, let's take a minute for our sponsor.
You got a sponsor for this webinar?
Yeah, we talked about this.
Yeah? Who is it?
It's us.
Oh, that's not a bad idea, actually.
Make Great Shots is a photography course like no other. We take you on an adventure to the spectacular mountains of Montana on our quest to find beautiful images. We then collaborate on compositions and the post-production of our images and share our secrets with you. Our goal is to encourage your growth as a photographer and an artist. Not only do we collaborate with each other to make great shots, but we'd also love to see what you come up with after you've learned from these course materials.
Do you know what, Blake? I actually don't feel bad about losing this contest between the two of us, because in essence, I am also a winner because each one of these shots was collaborative, not just in the composition, but also in the post-processing. So you could argue that I also won this contest.
Well, you know, Gavin, I think we're both winners here, as you've outlined, because you got like 60 hours of free one-on-one Photoshop consultation with me, and I got to see how you work in the field with your vlogging and compositional expertise. So I will say that we both won. We definitely both won.
Yeah, I feel better about it now.
And you know, I can actually send you this version, which is my test version of all the things that failed if you want.
You're all right.
All right, Gavin, how about you go ahead and share one of your images and talk about it from the behind the scenes.
Okay, yeah. So basically what we want to do with this webinar is just sort of divulge all of our secrets, basically, and show you what went into creating some of these stronger shots that we got from our trip when we were filming Make Great Shots. So I thought I'd show you this one. This is probably my favorite shot from the whole trip. Not because really of anything that I did in particular, but because of the moment. This beam of light, this whole, I would say, 15-minute period was one of the best shoots I've ever had. And it was all about capturing this lovely beam of light that blasted in through the valley, this lovely bit of light that you can see on the mountains there, and these really moody clouds. So I'll take you right back to the absolute basics and show you what I began with, and then show you how I step by step got to this end result. So I'm here in Photoshop, and these are my layers. And if I just click here, that is what I began with. So you can see that this raw file really doesn't feature that much of the beam of light. But the reason why I started with this is because I just wanted a nice intact sky shot, and then I could blend other shots on top of that. So I'll show you where those come in. If I switch this one on, you can see this is the one that has the beam of light coming in. But of course it's quite dark, so it's going to need some enhancement. So then I've got this next frame, which has got some brighter foreground, because obviously if I brightened up that dark exposure, I'd end up boosting a lot of noise. And also if you look over, if I switch this off, if you look over here, there's a nice splash of light on the mountain there. So what I'm doing is I'm combining multiple raw files that are maybe 20 seconds to a minute apart, just to get lovely little splashes of light and put them all together into one composition. And then on top of that, I start to enhance things just to bring out the details that are there. So we've got a little bit of a contrast curve here. I've made the shadows a little bit darker. So really it's not much of a curve. The highlights I've left alone. I've just made those shadows darker overall. Then we've got a curves adjustment layer up here just to make this a little bit brighter. Because really this shot, the most impressive thing about it is that beam of light. So I really wanted to make that pop. And then we've just got a little bit of a curve here to make the sky a little bit darker. And really that's how my shots evolve. I'm making a little adjustment to this area, a little adjustment to that area, and it just gradually builds up in a series of layers. So at this point, I'm figuring this is a little bit dark, so I brighten this up with an exposure adjustment layer, just to pop in certain parts of the image. You'll notice I'm not making it brighter in the sky there because I like that dark moodiness. And this one is a Gaussian blur layer, just to make this a little bit softer and a little bit more atmospheric. But then I wanted to make it a little bit warmer in color as well. So I've, on top of that, applied to this layer, I've got this color balance layer. And if you look at that, if we go into the highlights, you can see I've pulled this red slider over here and I've boosted up the reds just to make that little hot spot in the sky a little bit warmer. And then above that, I do some more exposure tweaks just to sort of make the sky a little bit more moody in the foreground. On top of that, I've got another gradient fill that's making everything just a slight bit yellow just in this area here. If I switch that off, you'll see that just makes that a little bit warmer. And then of course, bang, there is the goat. So the goat, it's from a shot that I took earlier, I don't know, a few minutes earlier, handheld. So when Blake and I were there, we were trying to find our compositions, and the goats would come and go. So the chances of them being in the right position as this beam of light is creeping into the valley, well, it's not very high. So I cheated. I pasted in a goat picture from earlier on, but it was, I don't know how many minutes it was, but the goats were there. It's kind of a common place to find them. A lot of people will get these goat shots. And then I just had a little bit of a contrast applied to those. And then we're still doing a few more sort of dodging and burning changes. This layer is to sort of boost the beam of light a little bit and the highlights on the lake there. And then this one just boosts the foreground. It's a shadow lift, I called it. And really, these are all just curves, adjustment layers. All I'm really doing is I'm either boosting the shadows or the highlights, or I'm making them a little bit darker. And then we've got a highlight lift in the sky. And then we've just got a general sort of curve overall where I've boosted the highlights and made the shadows a little bit darker, and that's just applied to most of the image, and I've just brushed it out of the parts that I didn't want. We've got a light ray boost there, just a little bit of a contrast adjustment on the light ray. And then what's this? Just a little bit of sky and foreground. And then finally, just another little boost for the light ray there. So as you can see, I use a lot of curves adjustment layers and gradually just brush them in using layer masks to accentuate the shadows and the highlights that already exist in the image. So really the only thing that I'm ashamed of, and I'm really not that ashamed of here with this one, is the goat. It's the only thing I cheated with. I feel like everything else is what was there at that time, and I've just gradually accentuated it to try and sort of encapsulate the feeling, the moment that we went through, and share that with you visually.
I think that this is a banger of a shot, man. And your composition, you can't even stray from that. Like, those two rocks are like perspective angles that lead right to the goat, which then leads right to that beam of light, which then goes all the way across to the other side of the image and touches over there. It's like you can't fit this into a rule of thirds. You can't fit this into some type of dynamic ratio. You can't fit this into a golden spiral. This right here is just, I think, masterfully leading the viewer into the space in a wonderful way. I'm really glad you beat me with this one.
Well, thank you, mate. I appreciate that. But I actually did like your shot. And when I first saw it, I thought, oh man, I might lose this one. So this one was, I think, was this the most close contest out of all of them?
This one was 80 or 75 votes apart. So
yeah,
only 4% apart. And it shows, because I pasted my goat in too. I did the same thing. So don't feel too bad. It was same scenario. Beautiful spot. You want to have that goat there. It's just part of making great shots is knowing that you have the tools and the assets to build it and put it all together.
Yeah. So what's your first shot going to be then for your reveal?
My first shot, let's talk about my waterfall, because I was actually surprised and shocked to win this one with the waterfall. I really liked your close-up shot of the waterfall, but I also don't think you were necessarily prepared enough for the level of editing you were going to have to do for that if I was looking at your image, because the progression of your images after that waterfall shot got exponentially better, and I was sweating bullets every time. So I'll talk about the waterfall shot first, because it looks like seemingly I wouldn't need to do much to this if you were to look at this straight from Adobe Camera Raw. But just like Gavin, you're going to see that I have a lot of layers built up here as well. And this is actually one of the things that we teach in the course Make Great Shots, that everything's a small build-up process. You start with something that's going to tweak this area, and you really are trying to find the spots in the image that you want the viewer to go to, and then you're kind of working around that. So that's really the idea and the premise behind Make Great Shots. And you could be looking at our layers stacks and being like, you guys are going to show us what? Don't worry. What we've done in Make Great Shots is we've making it actually palatable, so that instead of having 100 layers, we're just teaching you small little ways to make your image better over the course of 5 images, so that you can use that as a cumulative way to make all of your images better from each piece. So don't get intimidated by the amount of layers that we have here in Photoshop. I guarantee you we are going to make this course so much more approachable for you, and I think you're really going to enjoy that aspect. So let's start with what this looks like straight out of Adobe Camera Raw. In my personal opinion, this was actually a pretty good edit straight out of Adobe Camera Raw. And one could even say, well, what is it that you really need to do to an image like this to make it any better? If you get this out of Adobe Camera Raw, this is my end result. And I always start with it saying, man, like what could I do to make this image better? And it really comes down to, how do you navigate the viewer and where do you want to take them to? So everything I'm doing in this process is a matter of tightening the tones, as I call it, where you're basically trying to take this wide palette of tones and make it a little bit more structured for the viewer's eye. So these three right here are basically the path that I'm creating for the viewer before the image even starts to get built on from the color. I'm working on the tones first. So this is all the tonal work. Then I start moving into the color grading work to see what I want to do to cut color casts that might have come throughout the tonal process, and then also explore color a little bit further. In this technique here, I actually did use a circular polarizer, but the sun was so powerful that I needed to use a technique that was going to help me cut through some of that reflections on the rocks a little bit better. So that's a selective color technique that I use that just makes those yellows and oranges a little bit darker. The reflection is still there, but it's just not as evident. And then, a lot of times what I'm doing here is I'm working with not just highlights and shadows. That's when you separate out, how the viewer is going to navigate around the piece. But when you separate out your colors from warm and cool, you're separating out how the viewer is going to look into the image and what parts are going to emotively speak to them over another one. So I usually start with the development of my tones and then work my way through the colors. And you'll see here I've got some curves that are working on like the depth to kind of separate the foreground from the background. So if you're watching this, I think a great template that you can make for yourself for editing is tones first, colors second, and then you should constantly be thinking about depth. How are you getting the viewer to go from the front of the image to the back of the image? In most cases, that works very well. There are some instances where the image is kind of flat in general, but this has a lot of depth, so I'm trying to create that depth. This is a spotlight that I use a gradient that just draws the attention into this space a little bit more. It's almost like you're shining a flashlight right onto that area. Then we click through a couple more of these layers. Let's see here. What do I have here? So what I noticed was the foreground area here for this area here. I needed it to be a little bit darker to accentuate the rest of the highlights throughout the rest of the piece and just get a little bit more contrast in it. You're going to see that I use this warm spotlight quite a bit. I used it down here at first to draw the attention here, but then I realized that a lot of attention wasn't going to this back area. So I decided to put a warm spotlight that was actually a reflected gradient that, instead of being a flashlight here, is almost like a lightsaber that goes from one side of the image to the other and just leaves a little bit of light. And just like Gavin was talking about, this should be a slow build-up process that on a perception level, you wouldn't really necessarily notice it when you first looked at the image. You're not trying to get the viewer to if they can tell that you used a vignette, your vignette's too strong. If they can tell that you forced color into a space, you've forced a little bit too much color. If they can tell that you're trying to make it too contrasty, then you made it too contrasty. So the whole thing is like, let's do a slow build-up process. So here is actually an instance where usually I like to do my cleanup of the image beforehand, but as I edited this image, I realized that there were so many spots in here that I didn't like where the viewer's eye was going in the foreground. It was almost too chaotic in the foreground. So I tried to lessen that chaos and make it a little bit more simple so that the eye wouldn't get stuck on these simple details that we don't really like in the first place. And part of that is like, these little areas that didn't quite get water on them. While I'm on location, sure, I could bring a cup with me and dump them all over the place, or I can just use the remove tool in Photoshop because it's wonderful for that. I also removed a little bit of the swirlies down here that I didn't like and a couple of the debris that was inside that area. They tend to collect that quite a bit. And then I finished it off with just a little bit of subtle color grading that you can barely even tell. It's almost like I could probably just delete those layers to begin with. But all the while, what I'm doing when I work on this is I'm evaluating my color with some color evaluation tools, and I'm evaluating my tones to see that your eye is being navigated into those spaces. So that's what those layers are for. And I pretty much keep these layers on top of my editing process the whole time. One of them that we're going to dive in really deep in Make Great Shots is this tone evaluation. So you'll see how we break that down and what that means for you. You'll even get an action in the course when you press play, and you can have that right on top of your images, and we'll talk you through that. So that's pretty much it, man. And, there's a lot of layers here, but again, it's that slow build-up process to go from, it's good, right, to wow, like that's what we want to do. We're trying to build an experience for the viewer. We're not just trying to make okay shots. We're trying to build an experience that makes them feel what we felt.
Yeah. I wonder how many copies of this course we could sell if we changed the name to Make OK Shots. Right, anyway. All right, so on to this next image. I'll be honest with you. There's a reason why my image trounced Blake's image in the contest. And that is because the level of cheating here, to me, is, well, it's a little bit naughty. And I'll show you why. So let me just show you.
Hold on, before you say anything. When you first sent me this, my jaw dropped to my table and I was like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. Where did he go to shoot this? All right, now go ahead. Now you can show.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you. I went to two places, Blake. One was Montana, and the other one was Iceland. And that is because if I show you this, this is what it really looked like. So you can see that I still have that lovely light in the mountain and the clouds there, but that foreground is not even from the same continent. It's a different country entirely. And I find this type of thing to be questionable. It's not something that I would ever do to try and pass off an image as a legit image. So if I was putting an image in one of my books or whatever, or posting it out in my portfolio, I would probably not use this at all. And if I did use it, I would probably just disclose that here is what I did. Because I feel like as photographers, it's nice if you can post a beautiful image, but if you're willing to travel thousands of miles to try and capture a similar image, you'd be a bit disappointed if you got there to find out that it's not even possible and it looks like that, right?
You went from having a foreground to a fiveground here. That's amazing.
Yes, that's definitely a fiveground. I'll give you that. So right, let me show you what I did to turn this okay image into this great shot. So this is what I started with. This is pretty much a raw file with some very basic Adobe Camera Raw tweaks just to protect those bright highlights and the dark shadows. And I'll just switch on these layers and you'll see that it's just another gradual accentuation of what's there to begin with. So this one, you can see I've tried to make the sky a little bit moodier. Then I've got something going on in the foreground to make that a little bit darker. Then I'm adding some curves, adjustment layers, just to pop those highlights a little bit. And then again, kind of a vignette with some darker shadows. And then I try a little bit of warmth on the mountain there. You can see that's a color dodge layer that's part of one of the actions that we actually have in Make Great Shots. And then I've got a little bit more shadow pop there on the mountain. This one is kind of a vignette. A vignette is, to me, a vignette is a bit too obvious if you've just got an entire oval, but you'll see from the masking work that I've done there that I've just kind of brushed it into key parts of the image just to sort of suck your eye towards the center of the frame, but not in a way that you can see, oh, he's added a vignette. And then I've gone for that sort of matte black effect, which again is another action that you can use that's packed into the downloads for Make Great Shots. Then I'm trying to make the middle ground a little bit more contrasty, a little bit more contrast in the background there. And at this point, I'm sort of thinking, okay, it's okay, but this foreground is really not that great. So I start getting desperate, right? And I start using generative AI in Photoshop to make foreground that's more interesting. But I'm feeling quite shameful about this. And I'm thinking, I don't know if I could do that. So then I start thinking, well, what if I drag in an image from another portfolio image that I've got in my portfolio? At least then it's mine. It's cheating, but it's not as bad as generative AI. So this image, I think, is another one of my Iceland shots. And it was okay, but I thought I'll try and do a little bit more. So I worked on that a little bit, made it a little bit brighter, a little bit more contrast. And then I thought, well, let's just keep going. And then I dropped this one in. So this entire foreground here, if I show you the actual background by brushing this in from the mask, you'll see that it's the sea stacks of Vic. That's where this shot actually came from. So, I just thought that was really a shameful thing to do, but I didn't care because I just wanted to win this contest so that I wasn't a runner-up, which I am. So then once I dropped that in, I thought, well, this is going to need a lot more contrast. So that's basically how that foreground arrived. And you can see it takes up everything that you've got to look at that. So I wanted to make that a little bit darker and make it try and fit the mood of what's already there in the background. And so I basically just made the shadows and midtones really dark. And then after that, I just wanted to sort of darken down that foreground a little bit. After that, it's another sort of semi-vignette like the one I did earlier. And then we've got another burn curve, making it just a little bit darker. A lot of these curves adjustment layers are basically selective, almost vignettes, but it's just a case of taking your attention away from this part and making your attention go towards the other part through a series of making things darker or brighter. And you can see I've really done that here with this curves adjustment layer. So if you look at that shape in the water there, I'll just turn this off. You can see that I've looked at it and I've thought, oh, I love these lines that are coming towards your eye. I want to make that even more obvious. So I just added this highlight boost to just that area and then brushed it in very carefully. So just like before, everything's a series of gradual layers that build up to an overall image. And like Blake said, you know, you go away and you come back. I don't usually do all of this in one sitting. Sometimes it might be days apart, and then I can gain some sort of perspective or objectivity, and then you come back to it and think, what was I thinking? I've gone way too far, and you make subtle adjustments. But overall, I'm really happy with the end result there, even if it did involve quite a lot of shameful cheating. But as I said, I would never try and pass this off as a legit shot where I'm telling people, oh yes, that's what it looks like there. I would never do that. But, you know, to win a contest between me and Blake, I'd do it.
I think it's great. And, you know, honestly, I think it's an opportunity for people to understand that sometimes we spend a lot of money making our way to Glacier, you know, and if you don't have the stuff that you need on location, but you find it from another location, I'm 100% okay with that. I mean, when you're making art, you're making art. We're not taking pictures here, folks. We are making art. And when you're making art, there are no rules. And we even said at the beginning of this, no rules.
We did. And I'll be honest with you, Blake, after I saw those birds appear in your shot of St. Mary's Lake there, that kind of gave me the green light to take the cheating to the next level without feeling too bad about it.
But you cheated first with the goat.
Well, you cheated at the same time. You also put a goat.
But you didn't know I cheated.
I knew. I knew.
All right, fine. I'll show you my cheating too. So let's dive into this one, Gavin. This one actually is a hybrid of many, many shots. You'll even see I call this hybrid 2 because it started off like this. It actually started out as a vertical shot, and this is what I was going to submit. I really loved the light that was coming across here. And then I was like, no, I've got to win this competition, and this doesn't feel like a winner to me. So then I printed this one, and I brought it upstairs. I'm printing these and bringing them upstairs and showing my wife, and I'm putting them side by side. And she's like, not that one, not that one, not that one, not that. And I'm going back and forth like crazy. And then I even said, you know what? I really don't like this foreground compared to one of the other foregrounds I have from earlier that day. So I completely pieced this whole thing together. I pieced it together from this foreground from a completely different image. This background is actually from this image, and the sky is even from another image, and these birds are from Oregon from a completely different shoot. But in my defense, as I was photographing this, I even have an audio clip on my camera that says,
paste a seagull right above this shot because it flew right in at the perfect spot right between those two mountains.
So, you know, I made the document for myself that the birds were going to be there, but because my exposure was longer, they basically turned into nothing. So let's talk about how I built this one up from this hybrid perspective so you can see all the individual layers. It started out with this file right here. And what you'll notice about this file is that it doesn't go to the top of the canvas. I actually stretched this image about 10% of the length from the top so that I could make the foreground appear like it's coming rushing towards you more instead of being elongated and stretched out. I then added the background of the image from a series of shots that were similar to this one, but I liked the light that was better in that vertical shot here than in this vertical shot right here. Okay, so after I added that, I was then looking at all the different cloud images that I had from the morning, and I really enjoyed these clouds. So then I had to slowly build up on top of that. I added a little bit of vibrance to it. I put the birds on there, some selective color to help with some of these areas. You'll notice that this is something I do quite often. You know, with these areas right here, I did have a circular polarizer on, but it wasn't quite cutting the reflections enough, and those appeared to be distractions for me. So I used a pretty handy trick that I'd use with the selective color adjustment tool to target those areas to make them darker. I then did some color grading and then finished it off with a little bit of increased darkness there in the background on the sky. Now, this is a hybrid model, okay? So this is pieced together from many of them. You heard Gavin say that what he does sometimes is he'll work on an image, walk away, and come back. Work on the image, walk away, come back. I did that for probably 2 whole days on this image to get to this point. So some of that work also was done on this image here, where you see quite a bit of work happening here. This was going to be one of my starting images that I started to build up off of. Actually, this is more than likely, yep, this is the background more than likely for the actual finished image with a little bit of contrast increase on there. But there's a lot of buildup on all of these layers, and it's just a slow buildup process to get us from that initial stage from Adobe Camera Raw and slowly build up on the colors and build up on the tones to get the viewer into those spaces. What I like to tell people when it comes to how do you know where the viewer is going to go? Well, they're attracted to the areas of highest highlight. They're attracted to the areas that are most focused or in sharp detail, and they're most attracted to the highest saturated or most intense colors in the image. So knowing that, I started to piece this thing together to try and get the eye to navigate around.
Yeah, I still think my image should have won that contest, though. It's a bit upsetting, to be honest.
You know, Gavin, I would agree. When I saw your composition, I was stunned. And that's just that's kind of the thing that I think has been the premise of what I've learned through this process of collaborating with you, is that I tend to favor really strongly balanced compositions, whereas I see your compositions as being incredibly dynamic, that show lots of motion, lots of mood, lots of perspective. And I really like that. So I think I'm actually going to start looking at that more intently when I'm on location.
So that means you'll be getting your feet wet and standing in the lake like I did.
No, it means that the next time we do this, I'm going to lose.
I'm a loser.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. That was too soon. Sorry, dude.
Yeah, and I think one of my favorite shots of yours actually from that trip, Blake, was your Two Medicine Lake shot. Should we show them that one?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. I would, but actually we reserve that for the bonus content. So those who purchase the bonus content when they purchase the course will see the breakdown of that shot and what went into both of ours.
Yeah. So I think I speak for both of us, Blake, when I say that we had an absolutely brilliant time filming the content for this course, Make Great Shots. And what you could get out of using this course is not just the instruction that we gave you in all of the videos, both post-processing and on location. And part of what makes this course so unique is not only the collaboration between Blake and I, but also the opportunity that you have to kind of collaborate with us by submitting your images for a potential critique session during a live webinar.
So one of the things that we had in mind the whole time while creating this course is, as we were building the images in this course and showing you how we process these images, we took them to a certain point where they're good enough to stand on their own, but they'd be even better if you incorporated some of your artistic vision into the image. So we're going to leave you at a certain point where we're handing it off to you so that you can take that image to the next level. And what we want to do is we want to take submissions for a live event where we're going to take a sampling of images and we're going to critique them. So the idea behind that live event is to show you what we think works, what doesn't work, and what we find exceptional.
So does that mean that people could win an award?
They could win their very own Make Great Shots Award that is titled One of the Greatest Photographers in the World.
Can I submit my images?
You already did.
I'd like one of those trophies.
I told you could have this one. It's my test one. It's just the same thing. It's just got, it's kind of.
No, you're all right.
So our course, Make Great Shots, is on sale through April 3rd. We have a massive discount for this first week. After that, we're only going to have it open and available for 3 more weeks. We're going to get to a point where we're going to shut this down and it won't be available for purchase any longer. So if you're interested in this course, I would highly recommend getting it within the first week so you can get it at the best price possible.
But why is it only available for a month?
as much as I enjoy working with you, Gavin, I really just don't want you pestering me every month for the money I need to send you from the course sales.
I'm not that annoying.
You can be, Gavin, but yeah, small spurts.
Understandable, I guess.
So we're going to hang out here for the next 10 to 15 minutes or so. So if you have any questions about this course material or the edits that you saw today or about the many ways that Gavin annoys me, please feel free to ask those now.
Yeah, but just make sure that all technical questions are directed at Blake.
And all the ones that can be answered in Cran are answered by Gavin. That was great, man. I think it came together pretty well. You see all these awards over here?
Whoa, look at that.
Yeah. I didn't finish them yet. I'm waiting on new stickers to come in because we did some tests. But when the new stickers come in, they should have this reflective glow on them, kind of like that, and the white backgrounds. So let's tell them about this course. Here's the deal. We didn't really push this too hard in the sales video, but one of the things that we really wanted to do with this is we want this to be collaborative. We want you to be able to take the things that we've done in these images and have a shot at them, to put your artistic vision in them. How many things have we seen in this comment section about Blake did this incorrectly, Blake shouldn't have done that, Blake this, Blake that, but Gavin's a rock star. So now what we want you to do is we want to see what you would do with your vision so that I can make fun of you. I mean, so that I... what we're going to do is we're going to have, once the whole course is concluded, anyone who purchases the course is going to have the opportunity to work on the images in the course. And we're going to do a critique session to kind of give you an idea of what's working in the edits that you did, what's not working in the images that you edited. And then we're going to pick 3 that we think are the best that we're going to send an award to. So it doesn't matter where you live. I'm in America. But even if you live in Canada, I will ship it to you. Oh, wait. I'm going to get canceled for that. So, in all honesty, we really had a fantastic, fun time making this course. I know I did. And we really wanted this to be not just about us, but to include you guys as well.
Yeah, and I think one thing I want to mention that we probably should have mentioned a bit more throughout the sort of marketing materials of the course is that when we're doing these tutorials, both on location and in the processing, you know, it's a start to finish thing. One of the things that we spent a lot of time talking about was the why. You know, why do we make the decisions that we make when we're processing the image for each image, and each image has different needs. So we definitely put a lot of emphasis on the why are we doing this? What is the point of this? Because I feel like a lot of people get stuck with the why when it comes to their post-processing, because they look at their image and it's not apparent immediately what they need to do with it. So that I feel was something that we really wanted to include in the tutorials to sort of help you guys follow along with that logic so that you can ask your own questions of, you know, what does this need? Why would I process it this way? And I think the way that we've done it is really going to help you with your own compositions in the field and also in post.
That is absolutely correct. The why is the most important thing because, you know, when you're asking like what and how questions, those are actually kind of more beginner level questions, but the why is where you start to get into the real weeds. So when you get taught from a why perspective as opposed to a what and how perspective, it's just a night and day difference.
Yeah.
So let's answer some questions. You can hop over to the Q&A section. We deserve a comedy award, Danelle says. That's awesome. Good. Someone asks, what's the difference between the editing in my course material, like my Discovering Your Vision course, my Visionary Panel courses, and this course? And that's a great question because we wanted this to be, again, more about the why. So we spend a lot of time on the why. And especially from 2 eyes, from 2 brains, 2 eyes coming together to talk about the whys of what's happening there. So I think that is how it's a little bit different. You're seeing 2 different people, but we also want to make this as approachable as possible because we understand that not everyone is a Photoshop guru. So what we kind of internally discussed while we were making the course was 2 major concepts per image. And what we mean by that is we aren't going to just unload on you with 50,000 layers because you're going to get lost, right? So what we decided to do was take 5 images and do 2 techniques per image that you could then build up on your own images. So by the end of it, you learn 10 new techniques over the course of 5 images. which ended up being really good because then we make these actions for you, and it's stuff that you can use on your course on your images after the course material.
Yeah. So should we tackle some more of these questions then?
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
So Stephen B, I'll just kind of summarize your question. So you're talking about, when to pick times for favorable lighting, because sometimes it's difficult to get out there. And what I would say is, you mentioned sunrise and sunset, but I'll be honest, it's quite rare that I shoot sunrise and sunset these days. So in order to have successful shoots, what I recommend is that you just pick locations that will work in midday light, whether it's overcast or sunny. So for example, if you had a sunny, bright day in the summer, and by midday the sun is right overhead, that's when I head to canyons in forests to shoot rock formations or waterfalls. Sometimes the sun in that situation does really well. Or if it's absolutely pouring down, or like some of the shots that we took there in Glacier, it was gale force winds, and we thought we're not going to get good shots here, but we just went out anyway. I mean, that's the thing, is just go out anyway. But if you can pick a location that works for the weather that you've got, your chances of success are far greater than if you just try and get out for a sunrise or a sunset somewhere, only to get pretty bad light.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I have young kids also. So what I do is I usually just puts a little bit of duct tape on their mouth and totally kidding. Totally kidding. I take my oldest kid with me on some of these trips, but I agree 100% with all that. You just kind of have to make it work when you're on a vacation rather than a photo trip. But my wife knows that when there's a photo trip, there's a photo trip. And when there's a vacation, there's vacation. So Keith P., this is a good question. Do you use any third-party plugins, Gavin?
I don't know. I will use... well, I mean, the only things I use now are the actions that you created for Make Great Shots. I know that sounds like sales bullshit, but it's not, right? The ones that you created, especially the color dodge, I use it all the time. But when it comes to like things like TK9 or Lumenzia, I don't use any of that stuff. These days, I find that luminosity masks are not necessarily required. The only other software that I tend to use is like Topaz, for if I need to upscale or if I need to do a major noise reduction or something like that. And then sometimes I actually use, in fact, I used it today. I use Luminar Neo, especially for their pano stitching tool, which did today on this image that I sent to Blake earlier. I shot a selfie of Blake while I was there, and that wouldn't stitch in Photoshop. So I had to use Luminar for that. So that's pretty much it. That's all I use.
I have a panel I could sell you if you want it.
Will you give me a good deal?
I will. I'll give you the best friend discount. But you got to become my best friend first. Let me get to the next question. I'm just kidding. No, so I on all those images, I used my panel. Someone was asking why all my layers were color-coded, because when you press buttons on the panel, it color codes them so you know what type of effect it is. But other than that, I only use my panels, but that's all I use. So let's see. Could all of this adjusting be done in Lightroom Classic? What do you think?
No. Well, I don't use Lightroom, and I'm pretty sure Lightroom Classic, isn't that the sort of, is it a stripped down version of Lightroom? I'm not sure. But
yeah, they're kind of, as far as the engine that runs them, it's the same.
Same
Adobe
thing.
Camera Raw is the exact same engine. So I guess, could we have done all of the stuff that we did to these images in Adobe Camera Raw alone?
Yeah, I mean, I think Lightroom has got a lot better. I don't use it, but I've seen videos when it comes out with new features, and it gets more and more impressive all the time. But when it comes to the things that we do with exposure blending and time blending and really advanced contrast changes and color changes, it's got to be Photoshop. And I think I saw another question about what software that I use. And these days, I've got a package with Adobe. Not that I'm not trying to sell Adobe to you, right? But I realized I was paying something like $60 a month or more for the entire suite, and I never used any of it. And I thought, what am I doing? So I looked at it, And you can I'm actually paying something like $10 a month now to use Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Camera Raw and Bridge. And that is all that I need for 99% of my images. So $10 a month or roughly something like that gets me everything that I need. So that's why I don't feel the desire to go and play with Lightroom. But I must admit, every time I see people doing cool stuff with it, it makes me curious.
Yeah, Judy asked if all the shots in the course are for landscape. They are landscape. We were in Glacier National Park, and it's all just landscapes.
Yeah, maybe she means, is it horizontal or vertical? I don't know.
I think all of them were horizontal, except for this is also crazy. The bonus content was all vertical. How do we do that?
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Well, I think the reason why we did is because Blake had this ridiculous camera rig, right? So because I've been doing vlogging for 8 years now, I've learned to strip down my gear, right? And Blake's fairly new to going out and filming stuff on location, right? And so he wanted to make sure that we got everything, which is great. That's very professional. But the poor bugger had to carry this rig with so much equipment. So I had a nice pared down camera bag that I could tolerate, and even mine was heavy. But Blake, he arrives with this absolutely massive camera bag, totally brimmed with a bunch of gear they didn't really need, and immediately starts doing a high altitude hike. So you suffered that day, didn't you?
I did. I weighed myself, and then I weighed myself with my bag on before we left, and it was 55 extra pounds. And
awful.
yeah. Well, but see, the thing is, though, and this is good to know for the course. I wanted to show exactly what you would see in the back of a camera, and the only way that you can do that, well, at the time, was by using a Ninja monitor, so that the monitor could record, which has its own hard drive and its own battery, so that it could record what's in the back of the screen exactly as you would see it. So when we're trying to teach you how to build compositions, you're not seeing it from a video standpoint. You're seeing it from a photo standpoint, with the exact. Everything is exact to what you would see in the back of the screen, as if you were looking through the viewfinder yourself, which we needed to carry that rig in order to do that. Now, 3 days before the trip, though, I figured out another way to do it that only would have required maybe 15 pounds less. But regardless, I made the ultimate sacrifice so that you guys could have the best education possible. I'm just kidding.
It does look good. I must admit, like when I watch my vlogs now, the back of the camera scene is never as good as what you recorded. Well, I'm spoiled now. I might have to buy one of those gadgets.
Yeah, well, I'll teach you another way to do it, so you don't have to worry about buying that. But so Charlie says 100% on board with the why. With that being said, do you still walk the technical aspects of the layers and how you set them up? Absolutely. So we teach you from the bottom up. I mean, you're going to see why and what images we culled, why we culled them. We're going to show you the culling process for the images that needed culling. There was only one image that I think we put the tripod down and took one picture, and we're like, that's it. We don't need any more. So we're going to show you the culling process. Then we jump into Adobe Camera Raw. We show you the entire raw process. Then we go into Photoshop. We show you the entire Photoshop process. And we even give you the PSD files. So if you're curious, like, where did they do this layer and at what time did they do this? We made really small versions of our PSD file that are super small, so that you can open those up and you can see the exact layer structure and layer order, so that there's no questions at that point. So,
yeah. And then there's some other interesting questions. So Betty Lou said, as a wildlife photographer, what would I get out of this course? You know, the course is landscape photography. Well, you'd actually get a lot. I mean, the same kind of, you know, image manipulation techniques apply to pretty much any kind of photography. Really, it doesn't even matter that it's wildlife photography. But a lot of the contrast and color enhancements that we do, you would get some great. Put it this way: ever since we started recording this, just the hours that Blake and I put in together over all of the Zoom meetings, where we were going through these images and processing them in a collaborative way, I learned some stuff that I now use in every single image that I process. So I think you'll get a lot out of it, even if you shoot primarily wildlife.
Yes, I do shoot wildlife as well, on top of landscape stuff. And everything you see that I do with a landscape image, I do with wildlife. I actually have this phrase: you can use any technique that I use on any image that has pixels. Sounds about right.
Yeah.
So that means street photography, portrait photography. The difference is, how do you take what you've learned and put it into practical application? And that is something that is the next level. And you really only understand that practical application part when people teach the why to you. If no one teaches the why to you and you're stuck in the what and the how, you're going to be stuck with asking genre-based questions. But when you know the why, you will never ask another genre-based question again. So what you're asking is a genre-based question. Because this is a landscape course, will I learn something that will help me with my wildlife photography? That's a genre-based question. So the why behind everything will help you understand that. So all the things that you see with like spotlights, directing the viewer's eye, I do all that stuff in my wildlife photos as well, because those raw files that I get are absolutely atrocious. But after doing all that why work, you understand it, you'll start to see it. It's really great. Yeah. So I'm happy to report, Gavin, that sales are coming in. This is awesome. You guys are great. We really appreciate your support. This is fantastic.
And then Wendy asks, are the actions included in the course? Yes, they are.
Yes. Yeah, there's, I think, 10 actions included in the course, I believe. Yeah, there's 10 actions included in the course. And the way they're designed to go along with the image that we're working on. So if you're in this image, let's say it's the Logan Pass images, you'll see in the actions Logan Pass, and then the 2 actions that we used for Logan Pass, and then the next image, the 2 actions we used for that one. So all of those actions are even in the order of which we use them, in the order of which you watch the course. So we do also recommend you don't skip around, because some of the inside jokes in the later lessons are from earlier lessons. And also some of the things that we teach in the later lessons come from things that we showed you already in the earlier lessons. So it is actually designed to be watched Adventure 1 through Adventure 5. And you get 5 adventures in this. So we do 5 vlogs where you're in the Jeep with us, kind of going around and doing exactly what we're doing. And then you get the videos after that show the post-production, and the everything's included. Every work-along image, all the raw files. So what we did was we took all the raw files and we made them smaller versions of those raw files so that they would be easily distributed to you. So literally everything that we do in this course, we want you to have, because we want you to take the time to put the practical application into these images. And we will have a time when we tell you when we need you to show up to that event to see who wins one of these special awards. So that will be coming in due time. So for anybody who purchases the course, this is a month-long course availability. So let's talk about that before we answer any more questions. We're making this course available until April 24th. However, come April 3rd, we're increasing the price from $97 to $147. So what's going to happen is, for the last 3 weeks, that price is going to increase by $50. Now, once April 24th happens, we're going to shelf this course. We're going to put it away indefinitely until Gavin needs money again. And then, or until he pays me my gas money, whichever comes first.
We're only at 32 cents now. Come on.
That's right. I need that 32 cents though. So everything that we do on these images, we've included because we want you to learn something from this. It's not like, the typical course. I do courses all the time. I've been doing courses for 15 years. Gavin's been doing courses for quite a bit of time too. This is, I believe, the first ever course where we are encouraging you to be collaborative with us on the images that we edit. Now, I always encourage people to practice and experiment, but we really want to see your vision in these pieces after going through the course, because that's the beautiful thing about artistic vision, is nobody's vision is ever the same. So we want to see what unique artistic vision you're going to add to these images in this live event that we're going to do for the people who purchase this course.
Yeah. Well said, Blake.
Thank you.
And there's a link to the course somewhere in that box up there.
Yeah, there's a link there, and I'll also put one in the chat too. Here's in the chat.
So Greg says, would the concepts in the course apply to other software tools? Well, the thing is, broadly speaking, yes. The why and the choices that we make would apply, but realistically, to get the most out of it, I would say you would want to be using Photoshop. And I think, let's just say you were really good at some other software package. If you got this course, by the time you watched what we've done with the images and you've seen how powerful some of the edits are and the tools that we've used, you're probably going to end up getting Photoshop. And like I said, I'm paying around $10 a month for it. So
yeah, they
you
just
can't go wrong
increased
with
the
that.
price on that to $15, or I think $15 a month for the photography plan. I think, but that photography plan is worth its weight in gold. And here's the truth. I think a lot of people, this is just an aside, and again, I don't work for Adobe, okay? I've never made $1 off of Adobe. I don't even think Adobe knows what my name is. No. But here's the deal. When it comes to Adobe and why I promote this is I don't think that there's any software out there that does quite what Photoshop does. And there's everything else out there is kind of a knockoff, right? It's like Photoshop was the first. And it usually makes all the advances, and then other people pick up on it. They might make an advance here, make an advance there, but they always do it with this, oh, it's a one-time price thing. It's not going to be a one-time price. Let me be honest with you. All of these companies need to make money off of you year after year after year after year after year. So what's going to happen is, let's say you're with On1 or whatever those software. I'm not saying that software isn't good, but what I'm telling you is that if you purchase that software because you didn't want a subscription model, kind of open your eyes a little bit, because when the next year rolls around, guess what they're going to say? New version, upgrade price. New version, upgrade price. New version. So regardless of whatever plan you think you're on, you're going to be in some type of subscription plan. Unless you're one of those people who's like, I'm going to use Photoshop CS6 forever. And even if that's the case, most of the stuff that we do in this course, you could still do with Photoshop CS6, aside from like the generative fill stuff and some of the raw stuff. So that's really not like me pushing Adobe software. I just know, because I work in this industry so much, that I get a lot of pushback from people via email saying, Blake, I don't want to promote anything that Adobe does because it's a subscription model. Well, everything out there is essentially a subscription model. If you want the best of the best, they're going to get you at some point. So, that kind of defeats that bias, I guess. But really, in all honesty, if I want to work with the best of the best, I'm going to use Photoshop. It just, when at the end of the day, the masking is the best, blend modes, blend if. I think I've turned you into a blend if convert finally.
Every image now, every image.
Yeah. And blend if is a technique that we'll teach you in the course, that it uses something in Photoshop that's been there for like 30 years and no one's touched. Yeah.
So a couple more questions. So Mark P says, did you shoot your images with the medium format Hasselblad? And Blake, what did you use? So yes, all of my images that ended up in the contest were the Hasselblad, but I think no, actually both of us used. I used the Hasselblad and Blake used the A1.
No, I used this. I used a Polaroid land camera.
No, you didn't. Don't even try. No, he didn't.
I used a Sony A1. Yeah. And
the main advantage that I had with shooting with the Hasselblad was I could get handheld sharp images in low light, because that's what that camera does brilliantly. But for a lot of it, we used the A1 simply because we needed to have the video recorder attached to the camera, which you can't do with the Hasselblad, and also because Blake just wanted to show off his posh camera wraps. He has those vinyl wraps that make his camera look like a 12-year-old owns it.
No, it makes it look like my camera, so that when I'm at a workshop and I see a sea of cameras, I know which one is mine.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah.
But I do have a mild addiction to wrapping my cameras. I mean, look at this, dude. Look at that. Isn't that so pretty?
Well, yeah. I mean, every time I see you, it's different.
It is.
I think you've got a problem.
And look at this one. Its brother is an army green. Oh, it matches my Jeep.
It does. What came first, the Jeep or the camera?
The camera, because after I wrapped the camera, I said, hey, babe, look at how awesome the Jeep would look if I did this.
And he did do it. And how much
I did
that wrap cost on the Jeep? Well, let's not talk about that, because people are going to think they're paying too much for this course if they find out. So next question.
All the profits I make from this course are probably going to go into my Jeep, just being honest. Go ahead.
Talk about what you look for as you choose your composition, knowing what you can do in post. This is a really important statement or question, because if you know what you can do in post and you are liberated by the techniques that we show you in this course, then you're going to know exactly how to shoot the image when you're in the field. You're going to know, do I need to focus stack? You're going to need to know, do I need to bracket these exposures? Do I need to maybe underexpose this or overexpose this? So having those post-processing chops that you will get from this course, really, the word empower seems a bit cheesy these days, but it's true. It's like it gives you this power to be like on location and go, oh, I know exactly what this shot needs. I'm going to piece this together here. So, for example, Blake's image with the spirals in the waterfall there, you'll know, okay, I'm going to shoot this at, let's say, f8 to get everything super sharp, but maybe that's not a long enough shutter speed for those spirals. So I'll get that sharp image first. But then I'll do an f22 shot that's really dragging that shutter, and it slows things down and forces a really long exposure, just so that I can get those lovely spirals in the foreground, because I know how to blend those exposures and how to clean up the noise. So yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, and this is something that both Blake and I, we've been promoting this concept for years. If you have the processing chops, there's nothing you can't do on location, right? You can do anything that you want to do. You just play the little numbers games with ISO settings and apertures and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, you'll get a lot from the course in regards to how we do all that.
Yeah. So Donna asks, how much space do you need to download the course? The main course content is 3 gigabytes, about roughly. And then the bonus and deleted content, which you're going to buy because it's the best anyway, is like 1.21 gigs. So total for both, it's 4.21 gigs. So it's a big course. It is one download for the main content. So give it the time that it needs. Let the download go through. But it's stacked because we put all the files in there. We wanted to give you the best quality video that we could without sacrificing too much to make it transferable to you. It's all downloadable, so you're not going to watch this online. You download it, you watch it on your computer. We think it's better that way. That way you don't have to be tied to some type of login, and wherever you are, you can have it on your computer.
Yeah, and then Steve asks, how many hours is the actual course instruction?
221 minutes, I believe, is the main content, and then the bonus content, I think, was like 90 or 100 some minutes. So it's about 300 minutes, which translates to what, roughly-ish 5 hours total?
Yeah. So
5 hours total.
Whenever you're doing these kinds of courses, it's always a trade-off between giving people everything that they need, but not overdoing it, not over saturating you with too much information, and also not giving you a file that is so big you can't download it. So we tried to get that perfect balance of everything that you need in terms of the knowledge and the techniques, but still manageable files that you can download and watch without losing an entire day.
Exactly. Richard says, will this course help me with black and white shooting and processing? I think so. And I'll just give you my take on this, and then Gavin can give you his. I think that a black and white image, especially the process of making a black and white photo in post-production from a color image, is an effect. It's an artistic effect. So the way I approach that is make the best color photo you can, because then when you translate that into a black and white photo, you're already going to have the best data transferred over. So I will never tell someone to process a black and white image in the raw, like just on your raw file. I think it's one of the most destructive things you can do to those beautiful tones that are possible in your image, but you have to understand color first. The more you understand color, the better your black and white images are going to be. And I can stand behind that 1,000 times. I've seen so many gray on gray on gray on gray on gray images that people think are black and white, but the stars of the show are missing because their saturation and color intensity is missing. So if your saturation and color intensity are missing, your image that you're trying to turn into a black and white image is not going to be a good black and white image. Then there's also those people who are like, well, I don't know how to use color, so I'm just going to make it black and white. Now you're disgracing black and white because black and white draws all of its influence from the colors and how you process them. So it's a twofold thing. The better you learn color, the better your black and white images are going to be.
Yeah, agreed. And Noel asks, I didn't see any work being done in Camera Raw. Was Camera Raw used in any of the winning photos at all? Yeah, I mean, we use Adobe Camera Raw every single image that we process, and in the tutorials, that's where the work begins, you know. And Blake's got some awesome little things that we do in there, just to make sure that you're working on a strong foundation before you bring your image into Photoshop. You've really just got to get everything nice and clean and polished up in Adobe Camera Raw as a strong foundation. So yes, there's lots of that.
Yeah. Absolutely. And yeah, we kind of have the same process when it comes. What I was shocked about was that as different as Gavin and I are, we both process our images very similarly, don't we? I think.
Yeah, well, it's just a logical process,
Yeah.
isn't it? It's like we might call the process. You might have different terminology for what you do, but really, it's we end up taking the same path towards getting the same, the finished result.
Yeah. Richard says, will ACR be included in the course? ACR, Adobe Camera Raw, is automatically installed on your computer when you open or when you install Photoshop. So it's basically, that's the program that has to open when you drag and drop a RAW file into Photoshop. Photoshop cannot read raw data by itself. So it needs an engine, essentially, to grab that image and basically do the processing work to get it out of the RAW. So Adobe Camera Raw, if you drag and drop a RAW file into Photoshop, it'll automatically open in Adobe Camera Raw, and then you go from there.
Richard's asking about will the raw files be included in the cost? They are, but we have had to shrink them a little bit just so that they aren't so ginormous, because as I said earlier, every time you deliver large files like this, you want to try and shrink everything down so that people can, on different devices, different internet connections, can download it. So we have shrunk them, but for the purposes of following along with the tutorials, the raw files are going to be perfect for you.
Yep. Don asks, when we purchase the course, when will the live event take place? We have not determined a date yet. It will be sometime in May. So the launch ends April 24th. So we want to give people plenty of time to edit the images. So probably 3 weeks after that, I would imagine, somewhere in the middle of May, end of May, I would imagine is when we're going to have that live event. So you're not done with us yet. You get another one of these if you purchase this course. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
You know what I suspect? I suspect that some of them will submit images that will be like, oh, why didn't we do that?
Exactly. That's what I can't wait to see. I can't wait to see someone drop a bomb on us and us be like, dang, they really do deserve that award, right?
Yeah, let's see what another comment. So there's Torsten's asking a question about when he looks at the other pictures from the best of the best, you can't tell good from great again. I'm not sure what you mean there, but basically, to be honest, I don't even spend that much time these days looking at other photographers' work. Most of the other images that I see, if I'm researching a location and I just see what pops up on Google Images, that's when I look at other photographers' work. And sometimes it's good to really delve into what they've done and see, oh, how have they done that? But really, for me now, I've got to the stage where when it comes to the post-processing stuff, I pretty much know how they've done everything. I can look at an image and know what they've done. So for me, what interests me is when I am looking at other photographers' work, it's the composition, it's the timing, it's how they've framed up the shot that they've framed up. And that is something that we do discuss in the course. Again, it's all about the why. Why do you frame this particular composition up? Why do you angle down at that point in time? Or why do you move it to the right just a little bit to balance things out? These are all decisions that are based around why. And I think that is just as important as the how, as Blake mentioned earlier.
Yep. I want to rapid fire 3 of these real quick. Keith P, are the videos in high res? They're in as high res as we could make them that would make them transferable. These original file sizes for each video are about 1 gig a piece. I'm not joking. So we had to pare them down to be the most beautiful, but also the smallest size. So we tried to keep as much high res as we can. Basically what that means is that we use a program that scrapes all the fluff out of a video file and just gives you the details and the data. So they are as high res as we can make them while still being able to transfer them to you so you can download them. Another question, how do we submit our photos and when for this live event? We will have an email that goes out to all people who have purchased the course in due time. Don't worry about that. We will have all of that covered on the back end. So just know that we have you covered. We'll get an email out to you. If you purchase the course and we have your email on file with that purchase, which we do because it'll be in my system, you will get an email about this event. If you don't hear from us, I'd say by May 1st, and you're really curious about this, just shoot us, either one of us, an email, and we'll get you a link to register for that. And then there was another one. Can you articulate the differences between the two purchases? Is it just more images? No, not necessarily. So it was weird how it worked out. We went to Two Medicine Lake and Many Glacier, and when we went there, we really didn't do the same process that we did for all the other images. What we did on the bonus content was the first one, I gave Gavin a raw file of mine. He gave me a raw file of his. We processed them without each other knowing it, and then we talked about them, which was actually really fun. And then the second one in the deleted scenes was one of the images from the very last image, actually, of Two Medicine Lake, where we discuss the breakdown of our shots. And he'll discuss his layers, I'll discuss my layers. And the reason why we did this was because those two locations just didn't really fit the mold of the course content. So it was good stuff, and we didn't want to just delete it and not have anyone see the light of day on these two sets, but it didn't fit into the main course criteria. I think when you see the course and how the course is laid out and you see the bonus content, you'll see that they are different. It's not more of the same. A lot of times people wonder, is this just more of the same because I don't need more of the same? Well, if we were to give you more of the same, then I don't think we're doing our due diligence as good marketers, in my opinion. So it's not more of the same. It's more of the same banter, more of the same funny stuff. There's some really good stuff in those scenes. You are going to get two different vlogs in there that aren't going to be in the regular content because those vlogs go with the deleted scenes content. So, yeah.
Okay. One last question, or how much time have you got, Blake?
I can do. Let's do two more. You take one, I'll take one.
Okay. So Doug P says, when doing composites, do you do the work on the individual components, then combine? Or combine and work the composite? Well, with Photoshop, you never have to, you don't have to flatten your layers or anything like that, unless you're doing a couple of auto effects. So everything is individual. That's the beauty of Photoshop, is you can retain separate individual items and then manipulate each one of those on layers. So if you want to add a color tone or a contrast change to an element that you've brought in, you can do that, and it can stay completely, it's non-destructive editing. So if you decide, by the time you've added more layers and you've built this composite up, if you decide that the color in one of the elements is just too warm when everything else is really cold, you can easily make that element cooler, right? And so the way that we process our images, like I said, it's non-destructive. And even if it's just something as simple as bringing in a goat, right? We can do that in a way that we can just manipulate that without any sort of regret. And that is, again, people ask the questions, why do you use Photoshop over Lightroom? We can do anything. You can bring something in so that it fits perfectly. Now, we don't do and make great shots, but we do a little bit of it, and you'll see. I think it's done tastefully. It's done necessarily. See where you saw a little from Iceland, and then I make changes to that gradually. That's all in the course, and it's another tick in the box.
Yep, absolutely. This one's an easy one. US or Canadian dollars? It is in US dollars. So the store that is being purchased in US dollars. Will the live event be taped? I will be in Scotland for the entire month and won't be back until early June. Yes, our intent with this live event is to make sure that we have a replay. And even if you're not going to be there, let's say you're not going to be at the live event because something comes up, but you still want to have your shot at one of these beautiful awards that I spent so long making. If you want that shot at that, we're still going to put the images out that we think are the top three, right? So even if you can't make it, we're still going to figure out a way to get it to you. And this event will be recorded and you'll be able to access it indefinitely. We'll have to determine how that's going to be, whether that's going to be through a download or if it's just going to be a link that you can click and watch whenever you want. That'll be indefinitely available. We aren't quite sure on that one yet. We'll talk about that one and decide how that's going to go. Either way, it's really not that big of a deal on our part. We can make it downloadable. We can make it so that it's a link. It doesn't really matter. We might even do both. So that is what is going on for that. So anytime I do a live event, I always record it.
Yeah.
And I let people see those later. So even this live event throughout the course launch, we will be promoting this live event with the course launch because it's doing very well. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for supporting us. I don't think you understand. Like, Gavin and I don't have real jobs.
This is it.
This is what we do for a living, right? So by you purchasing this, you support us in everything we do. And even in such hard times that we have right now, I am grateful. I'm very grateful. I'm grateful for all of you. I understand economy-wise, it's not that great. I understand that there's some contention with politics, and I understand all that stuff. But I'm grateful for the fact that you guys, no matter what, are supporting us even through difficult times, because we're all going through difficult times. So we appreciate that. Thank you.
I'll just be happy, Blake, if I could make back the money that I spent driving there and then driving back. It was 10,000 kilometers in the camper. So
Dang.
if you get that back, then I'm going to be nagging you for gas money.
Okay.
So there's a question here from Max, which is a good one. It says, hi from New Zealand. Did either of you gentlemen, well, I am, he's not, take any specific photography study education courses when you first started in photography? I'm learning just off my own back for a year now, at least, YouTube and talking. Okay, so I did go to art college as a teenager. I only did a little bit of photography though. We were filming with black and white Nikon 35 millimeter. That was it. So that's all I did in art college. And after that, I totally forgot about photography, and then I picked it up later in life and was pretty much self-taught for everything. And I know this sounds like a sales pitch right now. Well, it is, but it isn't. I wish that I'd had resources like this 15 years ago when I was learning, right? And it really would have sort of, especially some of the stuff that Blake showed me when we're done with the post-processing stuff, I could have done with this years ago, right? So that's just the truth. I wish I'd got some. I don't think I would need to go to college, but just buying a bunch of courses, maybe going on a couple of workshops or a private session every now and then with a good photographer, that would have set me straight and saved me years of struggle and experimentation, which is not a bad thing. You should do that. You should experiment, but it is nice to get a quick shortcut to the finish line. And I think this course will help with that.
I can tell you firsthand experience. I went to art school. I got my degree in printmaking and sculpture. I got a BFA. So some people, that's like the bigger degree than a BA, whatever, if it means anything to anybody. But I got a BFA in printmaking and sculpture. And the reason why I did that was because I enjoyed photography, but I didn't want photography to be my sole purpose. I wanted to learn all art forms, and you could do all of that in those. But I will tell you this. What I teach in color theory, what I teach in terms of tones, what I teach in terms of all my courses, I did not learn in college. I didn't. I learned that by doing it on my own. I learned that by creating my own courses. It's no shame against colleges, I would say. I did go to an art school too. The University of Delaware had a phenomenal art program. It was renowned. But it was more about like, you want to be an artist? Okay, prove it. Do it. It wasn't really like, let me teach you every little technical nuance about what it is to be a photographer or an artist. So I would say that the way you're learning is probably a very good way to learn. But I would tell you to look for the people that teach you why, okay? And again, I'm not trying to make this a sales pitch, but if you see someone that's just regurgitating some type of technique that you've seen somewhere else, it's probably not someone you want to follow. You want to follow someone who can tell you why they're doing what they're doing, when they're doing it, and be very deliberate about it. If you find someone that can teach that way, that's someone that I think you should follow. But yeah, I think we're like a half an hour past where I think we expected to be. This is great. We've had a lot of great questions. We got a lot of good support coming in. Look, we had a lot of fun with this competition, and I know I can say for myself, it was just a friendly competition, right, Gavin?
Yeah, Blake, real friendly. Congratulations.
I think it was very friendly. We had a good time. We enjoyed the whole process. We loved every Monday that we got to get on and show each other the images that we were going to post onto the websites and the reactions that we both had. We were like, oh crap, you're going to crush me on this one. It was good. It was a lot of fun. And I think you're going to see that coming through in the course. There's a lot of synergy between me and Gavin when the camera comes on that it's all natural. Look, like the only thing that I think we scripted was the sales video, and that was grueling for us to get through. But we made it because everything else we've just so naturally do it. So we appreciate you for all your support, and we hope that you see that genuine stuff coming through. And if you like what you see, send us an email. We'd love to hear the stuff that you're going to hear from this, because look, if this isn't successful or if you don't like it, there will not be a second. This will be the only one that's ever made.
Yeah.
But if there's enough interest and it does well enough to support both of us, we will gladly do Make Greater Shots.
Make greater shots. Well, I tell you what, there is a question there from Keith. Any plans to make great shots too? So, as Blake said, if this does well enough, then absolutely, I would love to do this again and maybe do something a bit more ambitious. And I might get in trouble for mentioning this, but Blake and I were having a discussion the other day, and I said, wouldn't it be great if this really took off? Wouldn't it be great if, for Make Great Shots 2, Make Greater Shots, we could maybe have some kind of meetup with people, like all the people that bought the course. We could pick a location and say, right, if you want to come and go on a shoot with us and have dinner with us and drink some beers afterwards, this is where it's going to be at. This is when it's going to be at. I'd love to do something like that. So,
I will say this: I would, if you want that to happen, Gavin, I want it to happen too. But it's only going to happen if this thing is successful, because this was a ton of work. 7 months.
Yeah.
7 months. So here's the deal: if that does happen, what we'll do is when we record Make Greater Shots, or whatever that's going to be, number 2, volume 2, at the end of it, we'll tack it on. And if you guys want to come out and see us, that's great. And then what we'll do is we'll even give you a copy of all the locations that we shot. So if you want to stick around for a couple days and go shoot it while we go home, you're welcome. But we'll see what happens. We'll see. We won't be too ambitious yet. I want to make sure that everything goes like we plan it to go. And if it does, then yeah, I'd love to do that. That'd be great. Great. All right, everybody. Thank you very much. I'm going to put this link in the comments one more time. And that way, if you need to grab it, go ahead. I have an email that is going to be going out to you, let's see here, in 1 hour. And it will be your replay. That is going to have what we just talked about here, hopefully all done in an hour and a half. Actually, an hour. So that means I need to go so I can get to work. But we definitely appreciate you guys for being here. We thank you so much for your support. And you got anything, Gavin?
Yeah, just thanks for showing up, everybody. Really appreciate your support. Not just in the buying this course if you're interested, but just in watching our videos on YouTube and all your comments. And it's good to see the same names over and over again. We've got these regulars that we see. We do appreciate that. So thanks for showing up, and we'll see you in the next one.
All right, guys.
Bye-bye.
Love you later. Bye.
Bye.